Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Fane online event. My name is Annie Lord, and I'm Vogue's UK dating columnist and author of Notes on Heartbreak. I'm joined by Anoushka Warden, award-winning playwright, podcaster, and now author. Her debut book, I'm Fucking Amazing, is a sharp, relatable tale of love, sex, pain, and self-determination, and I absolutely loved it. Can you start off by telling us a bit about yourself and how you came to write a novel?
Yes. Oh my God, I've known myself for so long, I don't know where to start. Um, I I only started writing in my 30s. I hadn't ever given it a thought, like I didn't care about it as a thing for myself. Although weirdly, I had studied drama at uni and I had gone to drama school and been acting, but even then I kind of didn't think about I didn't think about writing. And then I was like an average actor. I couldn't do any accents, and yeah, apparently I had no screen presence. I might have had a bit of like stage presence, but anyway, wasn't going to be a successful career. So everyone kept saying, "Oh, you should do PR." Not being funny, when you're in your early 20s, you're like, "What the hell is PR?" But I
Yeah.
kept being told I would be good at it. So I became a comms assistant. No, I became a comms intern back when interns were allowed to just be like underpaid by proper organizations, like not paid. I had saved up some money so I could do it for like 3 months at the Royal Court Theatre, which produces the most amount of like new work in the whole of the country. So I just from my sort of journey by starting there, I think that's when my interest in writing happened, and very much still not me writing it, but really caring about. I want to see, I want to support, I want to publicize new work, because new work always has something in it that is so topical or so yeah, I always sort of say, but I think it's truthful. I basically worked across the Royal Court for about 15 years. Started there as like an intern, went away, worked somewhere else, came back as head of press. And by the time I came back, I think something in my body was ready. And then I literally wrote My Mum's a Twat in like 2 weeks, which even when I was writing it, I wasn't like, this is a play for a stage. It like I don't have much control. I don't know what you're like when you're writing. I just write and then I work out what it is. Um,
Yeah,
I'm
I'm
a
quite like that.
splurger. So that's sort of a weird potted history.
Yeah, I think as well, and I like mean this in such a good way. Like it doesn't, it really reads like you're talking with a friend, and you really feel that person, and it doesn't. Yeah, it's not like it's written in such a different way to so many things I've read, and it's really nice.
Oh, good.
Um, it doesn't feel like stiff and literary. It feels really real, and yeah, I really
Yeah,
enjoyed that
and
about it.
like to be honest, after being really excited that like someone wanted to do my book, I felt really weird because I've hardly read any books. I felt like, well, why? I don't know, that obviously nothing that I censored myself when I was writing it, but I haven't really read a lot. So
Mm.
I guess I was just coming to it, writing the thing genuinely that I would have loved to have read when I was like, oh my God, 13, 14, which is probably too young for the book, but how I would have found it then. And up until like my 20s, when I was still like, what does this mean? What does that mean? Um,
Mm.
but yeah, I've read like so many plays and seen like so many plays, but that part of my like reading muscle just I'm starting that journey now and I'm loving it. But oh my God, I'm so slow and it takes so long to read a book. And then people are just gonna buy everyone's books and read them. I think it's insane.
Maybe you shouldn't start reading, because then you might lose your ability to write really good novels.
Maybe.
um, yeah. So, how long did it take you to write this book then? If you wrote plays so quick, I guess plays are a lot shorter to write. Are they
Well,
harder?
I suppose, although some people write like 10-hour plays, but
Mm.
because I have a weird thing where this is a mixture of two things. I think it's having worked in an office my whole life, and it's having a father that was a pilot. So I log my hours. So everything I've ever done, I know exactly how many hours it takes, because back when I wrote the book, I was working full time. And so I could only write in the mornings or at the weekends, or when I'd be in really sort of big bits of it, I'd take annual leave, which, let's be clear, is that the most depressing thing in the world? Someone who takes annual leave to write a book. Anyway, sometimes I would skive off a little bit, but I would make it up in other ways. But so the book took me, I don't have my exact hours log on me, but the book took me a year. Over that year, it was probably, this is the first draft before, you know, people were like, let's make it look like a book. That was, yeah, probably about maybe 8. It's so crazy, but like maybe 8 weeks across a year. But sometimes like having a month not being able to do anything on it. Yes.
Oh, cool. That's interesting. And if you don't read much and stuff like that, like what sort of, were there any inspirations you took from of like plays maybe, or
Yeah,
anything?
well, so I don't read much, but I am excited by reading. And for me, I used to only really read when I'd gone holiday. And because I had quite a standard office setup job, you know, you have your 25 days annual leave. So I would have periods that I knew were, you know, not work, holiday. And then I would be really excited by what I was going to read. And I would say in the sort of years before the book, oh, I read Wetlands, which is by someone called Charlotte Roche. I think that's how you say their surname. And it kind of scared me and excited me at the same time. Like, you know, like when you wear an item of clothing that you're like, this is so bad, I think it's good. Saying for 1 minute, her writing's bad, but it was this female voice, you know, first person narrative. She was so gross and honest, and it really excited me. And then I also read, I think, is it Lustra? Lustre? Is that how you say
Oh
it?
yeah, I've read that, Luster.
By an American novelist whose name is
Raven Liani.
yes. So surname is Leanne or something.
Yeah.
Again, got it wrong. But
I don't know.
that really excited me because that was all about female sexual desire. And then weirdly, I think this isn't my exact music taste in one bundle, but like Lizzo's songs and Taylor Swift songs, I think massively inspiring, like women sort of just saying what's on their mind. And then very oddly but genuinely, the first bit of inspiration when I wanted to start the story was Dexter, the TV show, which, if you don't know it, is about this serial killer who is just so lovely. You don't mind that he is killing people. And in my head, my character is like obviously she's not killing anyone, but she's creating this unique cheating, not cheating system to carry on being a nice person in her relationship. And that was like at the core of the thing I wanted to write.
Yeah, I love that. I just realized I should probably ask you what it's actually about because I was getting so into talking. I was like, haven't yeah, could you give a summary about what the novel's about?
You know, is it like really awful if I ask you? I find it so, well, no, I know how to say it, but I find it really hard to summarize my work. But I suppose what it's about is I wanted to explore the question of whether female sexual desire can really hang around and in a sort of heterosexual long-term relationship. That was what the core of the book was. And then I wanted to do this through having a character who was really empowered and not embarrassed by her female bits, like what it smelled, like what it did, from a young age. So there's no shame there. And then and she's quite body positive. And then I wanted to look at what happens when that side of stuff stops sort of working, when the character is in something she really wants to commit to long term. And then I wanted to then take sort of the other side of it. So sort of the second part of the story was then looking at it the other way round, which is what happens if you're in something where like your fanny is just constantly wet all the time. but then mentally stuff might not be ideal in the relationship. So that was sort of what the structure of the book was. And then I'm just obsessed with writing like badass, unconventional women where there are happy endings, but it's not the one like society tells us that we're supposed to want. Like, I think that's a good summary of the book.
Yeah, that was a great summary. It's so funny hearing you like talk about her as a character, because in my head she's so real. Like it really does, like she exists in my head so much.
I love
Yeah. One thing there's so much stuff in it that's so relatable. Like, I don't know, like just something that comes to my head. It's like when that guy's like, ex has touched the chicken bone, and then he like fingers her after, and like she's thinking about how gross it is, like chicken juice on her fanny. And like I often find with writing the weird sorry, my voice like dropped then, it's funny. Like the more weird you think you're being, the more relatable you are, or like the more, when I
yeah,
feel
I
like
like
I'm
that.
being where I'm saying something so odd no one's gonna get what I'm talking
Yeah.
about, I'm actually getting closer to what people feel like, and that it's nice to hear.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
guess that's because in those like moments, we're thinking all the time. Our brain's like never stopping. And you might be
Mm.
being like in this case, the character being fingered on the street by someone she thinks she fancies, and then suddenly remembers he used his fingers to eat his chicken, and now there's gravy up my fanny. And I think in the exact part, the character just, it stops there, but the continuation of that worry might be, and then now am I going to get thrush? And what do I need to do? And do I need to wash it? You know,
Mm.
like I obviously I just dip into that a little bit, but I'd love to just write one long thing one day, which is only the internal workings of, but I mean that would probably be quite a crap plot.
I'd read it. And why was it that you wanted to write something about female desire and pleasure and stuff like that?
Yes. Why? I think just because I am a female and I am interested myself in, you know, desire and what that means as I get older.
Mm.
And also just the like genuinely, I just want to sort of write empowering stories that have a version of something. It's not the only version that could
Mm.
genuinely maybe be helpful for predominantly younger females. But whilst not wanting that to be the only thing, because it's you know, YA was a thought, but I was like, but I want to write it in a way where someone, you know, over 40 finds it as hopefully um relatable or interesting, because the amount of sort of self-discovery or coming of age stuff that happens to us, you know, in every decade we move on, like
Mm.
that's what I'm sort of interested in.
Yeah, definitely. I thought a lot. It came to my head when I was reading, just of the you know, desire in long-term relationships and stuff. I remember watching or listening to a podcast. I listened to like Abby Clancy and Peter Crouch's podcast. I don't know if you listen to it,
I'll put it on
but
my list.
that it's
I'm
very
literally
funny.
writing this.
But there is such a vibe in it where she's always like moaning about like having sex with him, and there's so many celebrity couples where they have that vibe of like just swatting his hand away, and like I think
Yes.
Vogue and Spencer Matthews, that's like an ongoing bit between them. And I just like, it's kind of like, it is funny and it is like realistic, but then it's like such a sad thing that we're taught to accept that just like is
Yeah.
the case, that like, or just that's a role women take of like I hate having sex with my husband. And it's like, that's actually really sad, like.
Yeah. And I've got sort of two thoughts on that. What probably neither like directly to what you're saying, but what I sort of for the book, I think I don't know how well I did this, but I liked the idea of like people just saying to you, "Oh yeah, long-term relationships are hard work. Things come in and out," and it's like, but how do you know when something's in and out? Like, not, oh, I'm not in the mood, you know, knocking the hand away, like you just said. But how do you know when
Yeah.
something's deeper? And I think particularly, I don't know about how you feel with the conversation when you were growing up, but I certainly feel like me and my generation of friends, like that just wasn't discussed. It was just like relationships are hard work, so get on with it. Um,
Mm.
and just not having those spaces to be like, what if it's hard work? Because my fanny is always dry because the man I'm having sex with makes me feel sick.
Yeah, 100%. And I thought when I was reading the book, like I knew that women could have pain when they had sex, but in my head it was either like a physical thing
Yeah.
or it would be the same with all men. And I was realizing how much I didn't know or
Oh yeah.
like think about. You never read about it at all,
Yeah.
really.
And to be honest, I purposely didn't go down. I know there's proper conditions where that's a thing, vaginal pain linked to sort of, I don't know what the wording is, basically not being aroused enough by your partner.
Mm.
But I liked that I wasn't trying to, I didn't want to attach it to an exact thing like is it endometriosis? I find it really hard to say that word. So that is something that could cause pain and then but I feel like you said something really good and I sort of lost the track of it. Oh, I know what I was going to say. Yeah, and I think the thing is, I think if we were men, you would have known more of that. Like, basically, because I feel like no one really cares what's going on. Like the few times I've had to have medical investigations into stuff, from whether it's like smear testy to other stuff, it really feels like no one is really invested in that. And if they're not invested in it, how is the conversation in the wider sort of scheme of things coming across? And I feel like what this character has, what it presents as, is something's not working with her fanny. But if I feel like if that was a male person going through erectile dysfunction, it would be all hands on and there'd be lots of things. Whereas I don't feel like it's equal in that from my, limited research and experience.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like, even it's interesting that she's such a like has such a liberated attitude towards sex and yet is still putting men's pleasure over her own. That's so like
Yeah, and
relatable in that way.
yeah, and that made me think of I mean, I didn't go into in this book, but it was something I thought about a lot in a more recent thing I'm writing about. I'm like, oh my God, what part of me vocally is real when I'm having sex or not? And I grew up in an era where this is gonna maybe sound like I'm really old, but like we didn't have the internet until I was like late teens, or social media, and certainly didn't like have access to porn. So somewhere I've learnt certain noises and stuff, and then if you think about it too much, you're like, what's the real noise? Like, is there a
Yeah.
noise? And I want to write something about it, but I'm so on the edge of like what I think about all of that. But I find that really interesting.
I read a book recently called Lazy City, and it was talking about how it was just weird because when you think the way you have sex or talk when you're having sex is how you have talk and the way you have sex, and then it was like quoting, I don't know, just like your dick is so hard, da, 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 that sort of thing, and then was saying, oh, that's the way that is from porn, and I
Yeah.
was like, yeah, but then we all find it hot because of
Yes.
porn, but then like it doesn't mean it's not hot for us, but it's
I
still
know that
weird that it comes from that.
that tunnel, that sort of thingy that you're going into is what you get into, because then the whole point with conditioning sometimes is then you like it is in it as well. So it's really hard to like pick those things out. But I
Yeah.
find it a fascinating subject.
Or I sometimes notice with things that I fantasize about, I feel like if you unpack them, they are very much about men's pleasure. And
Yeah.
then I'm like, but
Oh
then
yeah.
it is what I've learned to find hot.
Yeah.
But it's just hard to, some of the things I'd fantasize about, it's like, why would
Yeah.
that work for me? I don't
I
understand.
I definitely have the same, where I think a lot of my fantasies, without, it's only, I think it's like through the male gaze, like as if I've become like this all-seeing male eye, and that's what my fantasies are. And I'm speaking as a heterosexual female, so maybe that sort of part of it I don't know, but no, it is like properly fucked up, isn't it?
Yeah. I can't be bothered to unpack it though. I'll just
We'll have to,
I'll just carry on.
go on a week's workshop where you and I just try and work out what that is.
Yeah. Yeah, and also with the like abortion in the book, I had the same sort of feeling of like, wow, I've never read about this. Like I feel like I've seen it on TV and then they always change their mind at the last minute and stuff like that. But it was interesting, I think, as well, just reading it and being really inside the head of someone going through it and stuff. Like, was that something it felt important to write about, or was it just part of the story? And
no, I think as I said, I don't plan when I write, but I must do somewhere. I'd been thinking on this for a couple of years before I sat down and started writing. And so I do have an agenda. I'm just not able to say what it is until it's done. But like, I knew that had to be in it. And I think the reason for it having to be in it is, even as when I started the book as a woman in my 30s, I was absolutely petrified of what that meant if I got pregnant and I didn't want it, and how would I do it. And like, I even had, got access to the internet, and it didn't feel still like something that is like clear or sort of well flagged. And even though my group of female friends and I talk about a lot of things, it's still not quite the thing that is just like, way over the prosecco, so that did feel really important to include, and I wanted to include, to the best of my sort of like research and thinking, the two different versions, like all of that was sort of quite new thinking to me. And yeah, everybody's sort of, I mean, lucky enough in this country that it is offered as a free service, but like, it didn't even seem like there was always a clear sort of version of how that happens. So how on earth are you supposed to know what to ask for that's going to work best for your mind and body?
Has sex been something you've always been quite comfortable being open with, or is that something you've had to learn over time?
Oh yes, so good question. I think I've always been open with my whoever I consider a good mate, which, to be honest, if I've spent a whole evening with you and I like you, you are probably now a good mate. So in that sense, yes. And then with writing it, I think maybe because I didn't start writing till I was 30, I know I keep going on about that, but I had a proper job. The writing was just on the side, as in I wasn't having to earn my money through it. So I was just completely free and uncensored, because, I used to joke about it, the book, because I thought I was writing like my third play. But again, no one had asked me to write it. So I was just like, I did whatever I wanted, because like, why wouldn't you if no one's expecting something or waiting on something? So when I'm writing, I'm very uncensored. But like in acting, people say there's method actors, which FYI, I was not when I was an actor. But I wonder when I write if I'm like a method writer, because I don't write in cafes and stuff, because my friends, if I'm sort of with them and on a writing retreat, they're like, oh my God, your face goes crazy. Like, I cry when I'm writing, I laugh, like, so I think I might be a method writer, which means I'm not embarrassed when I'm in it. But with the book, after it went into the editorial process, which obviously becomes less creative, and it's like a year or so on, oh my God, when I used to have to reread the sex bits, I'd be like, oh, shut her up. Like, what is she doing? And like, anytime the word like blowjob came up, and I would just be there like, it's almost like I was, I don't know. So that's a weird relationship that I need to work on.
That's funny. When I was because I think you've got a actor reading yours out, right? Like doing the audiobook, sorry. Yeah, because I had to read the audiobook for mine, and I found it so horrible having to read it out.
I was going to ask, so as I mentioned, I was reading your book, and then I was just doing the audio version when I was on the train. And I just thought, there is something about when I'm not saying this is your book, when I'm reading non-fiction, I quite like maybe the author of it. However, I'm like, as a story, why would you, get the person who's trained to be great at acting? So Esther did mine. Oh, like, when I hear her doing it, I have a very different relationship to when I'm rereading my own words.
Oh, that's interesting, yeah.
So, but I mean, you sounded great on yours, but I thought, dry mouth, you have to like talk for 12 hours.
Oh my God, yeah.
And then also, like you say, I'm sure there's points in your book, whether something's fiction or not, get you emotionally, and then you've got to be in a studio being like, blah, blah. I don't know. I feel like don't do it to yourself again.
Yeah, no, it was so mortifying. Like when the guy who was recording it would be like, "Oh, can you say that line again?" I'll be like, "Oh,
Well, you
no!"
did it.
Like I don't want to say nipple out loud. It makes someone die.
Yeah. Yes.
Um, oh, and like yeah, so the lead in it, she's really flawed and gets very angry and lies and cheats, and I really love that she's just a three-dimensional person. Could you talk a bit about that? Like, you know, I feel like it's still, I do feel like now when you watch stuff or read things that we do get like flawed women
Yeah.
characters, but I don't know if that was a question, but
No, I know what you mean. It's funny, in the book is coming out in America next month, and in some of their comms, because it's a different like publisher and team, people were sort of trying to attach the word messy, and I was like, this is probably just a me thing, but flawed is what we all are. Messy feels a little bit gendered, and so it's like just writing the character that the men have been able to have forever. A normal human going through life who is probably a bit shit, a bit unlikable, maybe goodness in us, because I do like to think there's goodness somewhere in everyone. But yeah, I'm certainly not friends with any really perfect, unflawed people. I don't know if you are.
no, then they'd probably be really annoying.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I feel like yeah, and that's also with the guy characters as well. Like, I thought it was with Three, the husband. I thought it was, you know, he's got a lot of issues, but like I don't know, it just wasn't as black and white as sometimes when you read about, you know,
Yeah.
toxic relationships. I feel like,
Yeah. It was really important to me because the two male characters, the main two male characters in it, also both do really awful, very different things. But like I was like, I only am interested in writing them in a likable way, because otherwise we then demonize those things. So like when their fights in the first relationship do get quite scary and toxic, being able to still sympathize with that, because being a human is hard and we get it wrong, and sometimes we get it wrong because we're sort of paired up in the wrong thing. And like with the second character, sometimes humans make really bad decisions because they are genuinely trying to protect something else, but they just haven't got the, I don't know, communication skills to do that in a non sort of shit way.
yeah, definitely. I was like, sometimes when people spoke about my book after it came out, or like columns and stuff, they always go, say brave, like, oh, I don't know. I just wondered how you, because I feel like people are going to say that a lot about this book, be like,
yeah, I think that's
wow, you're so brave for talking about, like, do you feel brave, or is that, yeah.
I think that's a good question, and people have said it, and people said it about some of my other work as well. And I think to be brave, maybe something has to feel scary. And when I'm writing it, it's not scary. I feel really safe in my office space writing my book. So I don't think that's brave. I think that's being able to be like, I've written something and that's there and I'm here. But I don't know what we were saying for my weird relationship about being slightly embarrassed about something that, like, I think I've written like the dirtiest, sexiest, like I kept being like, hey, my DIY porno. Obviously it's probably not those things at all, but like, yeah, me just being able to drive through that and not be too full of whatever that is, embarrassment, shame, at the thought when lots of other people are going to read it. And understandably, some people won't like it and it won't be for them. And that's really fine, because that is like how stories in life should work. But I suppose it's when you're told that, whether you ask for it or not, maybe that's when I'll need to be brave.
Yeah, I always pretend that no one's ever going to read it, like you were saying earlier, which I think does help.
That's a great idea.
Yeah,
Yes. Did you mind when people would say that your writing's brave.
No, well, sometimes if friends would come up to you in parties and be like, "Oh, it's so honest" or something, I'd be like, "Ugh," like, because then it makes you feel like you said something you shouldn't have said. Or like, I found it really embarrassing when, because it's about a breakup, like I I would talk to my girlfriends about, you know, not being able to get up and crying all the time, but I wouldn't talk about that with guy friends. And then if they would say to me like, "Oh shit, you were like really upset, weren't you?" I'd be like, "No, I was fine. I was fine. I was
Uh,
just exaggerating for the book." Like that made me feel really weird and exposed.
that's
But
interesting. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
What was I going to ask next? Oh, I was wondering, like, I don't know if you've seen, but there's been like people talking about this on TikTok and stuff. Like young people say like that, complaining about the sex scenes in films and saying they're unnecessary and stuff, or like
Unnecessary. Uh,
yeah, and like wanting censorship and stuff. Like, do you have any thoughts about that? Because I don't know, I feel like it's a bit, I get when these people say it about like Oppenheimer and stuff, where like
so
there might
weirdly,
be an unnecessary
I
sex
had a
scene.
strong reaction to that. So
Mm.
I haven't gone on TikTok, so I'm not exactly aware of what that conversation is in relation to. But when I
Mm.
watched Oppenheimer, I had a really female response to, I've forgotten who the actor was, but she was in the bath.
Florence Pugh.
Yeah, and
Oh yeah.
I had a really strong reaction to where I just was like sort of a bit like, "Oh, that's not necessary."
Mm.
Um but I don't know, for me, my thought process didn't then go to the thought of like censoring it. I
Mm.
I do think, having sort of started out in theatre, um, I do often feel what theatre does really good is the power of certain things being off stage, off camera.
Mm.
And I don't know, like, obviously in a book, that's partly why this became a book, not a theatre thing, because I could say everything I wanted to say. Whereas, yeah, it's just quite hard to do that on screen or on the stage. And I don't know how many things I've seen where I feel like it feels really real. Uh,
Mm.
and I don't just mean the really obvious thing of all women ever coming ridiculously quickly, from a penis being inside them. More just even the kind of, the fizzle and the startle stuff.
Mm.
But no, I don't know as much about that conversation as I should, the TikTok kicking off stuff.
Yeah. To be honest, I don't think anything will come of it. I just thought it was interesting, that idea, because I think, I don't know, like if a sex scene is like, I don't know, that's probably my favorite bit of films.
Right.
But not when they're not like when they're good, or I don't know. I just
Yeah. Maybe I haven't watched enough. There was this, oh God, this is terrible because I can have never anything. Keira Knightley was in a film. I think it was like a Russian classic, Anna Karenina or something, maybe.
oh right, yeah, yeah.
Oh, there was a scene in that, and I would have been, again, I have no sense of time or memory, but I remember being really excited about that. And I'm not normally that bothered about what film she's in. It's not like, because I'm a mega Keira Knightley fan,
Mm.
but there was something very good in that sex scene.
Oh, I have to watch
I sound like
it.
a perv.
No. um I was also like, what was how did you decide, or you might not have even decided, you might have just used it, the word fanny? Because I always struggle when I'm writing or just talking, like what you word to use, because vagina feels the most
Yeah.
natural in the sense that's the one we've always used, but then
Yeah.
vagina feels really like clinical and or it's like not correct, isn't it? You
Yes.
meant to say vulva. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
basically, how did you land on a
Yeah.
word?
Um, how did I land on that word? I think I had a postcard of, like, I think I got it from the Vagina Museum in Camden, and it had every
Mm.
single word for like vagina on it. And I don't know why, just as a personal preference, Fanny sort of didn't, it always made, Fanny always sort of felt a bit funny and not too sexual, but not like pathetic, like I can't even think of any pathetic examples.
Mm.
So I liked, because I knew the character was going to use it so widely throughout the book, I wanted something that sort of did fit in that. But I've just finished book 2, where the female character has sex and stuff. And so just currently I've got her saying vagina, and I'm like, that's not right, but it's not, you know, like I think it's a hard question.
It is, and it's probably a lot, isn't it, from like growing up and feeling ashamed and like it being a gross thing to to have at school and stuff.
That's not knowing, like us all thinking it was just the vagina. Like again, just this lack of genuinely sort of medical explanation about what is going on. Like I'm pretty sure a lot of me and my friends, I don't think I knew I had a wee hole in a different hole, like till probably quite long. It's like ridiculous.
At the minute, something I'm writing at the minute, I was like not sure how to talk about, because I was trying to write sex scenes, so I was just putting like 5 after each other, like vagina, foof, nun, fanny, trying to make it like a part of like a comment on it, but I don't know if it's like clumsy, but like nothing feels comfortable to say. And then like in like erotic stuff, what they say really I don't know, like between my legs or something, which sounds like
so I haven't read a lot of erotic fiction, but I've got a book that the publishers have sent me. I think it's a collection of short stories, and I'm so excited, but I feel like, oh, I wish I'd opened it already, because then I might know. But when I'm reading stuff, if it's something like the wet between my legs, like I'm like, oh, whatever, I'm turned off, go away. It's tricky, isn't it? But I do think some people might find the word fanny immature. I just sort of decided to claim it and own it, hopefully in a way that it isn't. But the book's coming out in America, and fanny over there means bum, so I'm just like, well, hopefully not.
Oh my god, that's so funny. I wonder, like, how, just because she is so vivid, the character, and does feel so real, like I feel like people, are you worried, because I've seen other writers have this problem where people constantly, like interviewers always want to know if it's them, like are you worried about that, or how do you feel about people thinking that?
I think that was probably something I thought about when I wrote my first play, because I think in theatre this might be a wrong generalization, but if writers do their first play and it's a monologue, everyone sort of decides it's autobiographical. Well, my first play was a monologue, and it was autobiographical in so much as a crap memory and, you know, a vivid imagination. But because my first play was, I feel a little bit free from that conversation, because I can be like, oh no, I've done my autobiographical thing, it was that, and then I wrote the second play, which wasn't, and I wrote my third play, and I've done a film, and I've done a TV show, and I've done but I think the thing I was nervous about was because of the sex stuff in it being like, well, that is all you. And obviously when I write, I'm in it loads, and so is all the female people I've stolen stuff off, and male people, and podcasts, and like glamour quizzes. And if I think if I had to like lay everything out and like bag what was, I think it would be like, I think I would explode. I don't think I'd be able to do it. And so sort of knowing that, but I think also we never are in control of what other people think, and almost trying too hard to counter something is sort of just a waste. So I suppose let people think what they want. I was reading Monica, did you say her surname Heisey?
Oh yeah, I say Heisey. I think that's right.
I was reading her book, and because as I mentioned, I had a like long career as a head of comms, as a PR. I'm very good at reading material and being like, this is what this is, as in the marketing material, the PR material. It could not have been clearer in all of her comms around her book that this is fiction. Like, this is fiction. And then even when I was reading it, being very aware of this, I got so into the book, I'm like, I've decided that the author is it. And maybe that's actually the power of good writing, because I knew it wasn't, and I'd read the press pieces, and then I was like, I knew she even you were like doing it. So
yeah, that makes sense. I guess also like women do write personal things a lot more than men, I guess, which is also maybe why the
Yeah,
association
I'd be
happens.
interested. I don't know about that because, as I said, I haven't read enough. But
It
I
might,
do.
I might be making a generalization
Well,
actually.
do
I
you
don't
know
know.
what? I bet there's loads and loads of male authors throughout history who have written things that people wouldn't even come close to asking, is this real?
Mm.
That feels like a female thing. But I'm quite excited to, if I get through all the books I want to write, which are all, I think, wildly different stories, and then if
Oh,
every time
fun.
they say this is you, I can one day be like, I mean, 100 people, guys, whatever.
That was actually when I was like learning how to write fiction. I was like, oh, you don't have to make everything up. And it's also made me really admire like people who write sci-fi and stuff, because obviously I guess still they'll be picking
Well, I
from
bet
real
that is
things.
still
But
just
like,
showing there. Because the thing is, why as a writer would you write something if you're not genuinely really interested and invested in
mm,
what it is as a human? I've just finished, but it's a long process, but I'm in the process of like draft 4 of a feature film for the BFI. And it's an idea I came up with based on someone's true story about a woman who swims the English Channel to get over the grief of 11 failed rounds of IVF. So I have never swam the Channel. I have never had any IVF. But I was really excited about this story. And when my friend read the script, they were like, "You're so in it." I'm like, I haven't swum the
mm,
show. So I wonder if it's just something that me as a writer does when I'm writing stuff.
yeah.
I'm just in it somewhere.
And and like when you were talking about writing earlier, like because I write in a similar way to you, I kind of splurge on the page. Like I do think it is kind of a weird mystical thing where something takes you're not I feel like the best when you're doing it the best, you're not thinking that you're writing anything, you're just like and
Yeah.
something's like inhabited you, like you were saying with the method acting thing. Because I was speaking to a friend who's a writer, and she was saying that she will um write a paragraph and then make that paragraph good and then write another, and I was like, oh my God, that's
I'd
I would
never
find that
finish anything.
impossible. Yeah.
No, I'm like probably too fast. I just like, but I think I have to be to like get it out and then it's done.
Mm.
But there was a really brilliant playwright called Stephen Jeffries who used to do a lot of like groups for playwrights. And I think he had a playwriting book, and he said there's 2 types of writer. You're either a splurger or a planner, and you can't really, change what you are. And so you and I
Mm.
will only ever be that. And I think it's harder to explain what's going on with the splurger,
Mm.
uh, other than just I if I start writing something, I have this weird like feeling in my gut that like this is going to be something, but I couldn't tell you like, characters pop up and surprise me, and then suddenly it's turned DIY porny, and that's like I must have known on some
Yeah,
subconscious level.
that's like really comforting to hear because I've never
Good.
thought about it that way.
And also
um
in my like PR job, PR is all about planning. Like producers want to know what's the plan for the campaign, what's this. But because I'm a splurger, I found that like so incredibly hard. But my PR
mm.
campaigns were always, I'm pretty sure, like really good and brilliant. But I couldn't sort of present that beforehand. And I got to the place where I worked for people who understood that and trusted me. But like in most normal jobs, you'd be like, rubbish lady out of here. Yeah, it's across a lot of things.
That's interesting. I love the way, like at the end of the book, I don't know if spoiler would take out of this, but just that she chooses herself and that kind of thing. And I feel like, um, I don't know, I relate so much with what you were saying earlier about like how, um, you'd like young women to read it and feel comforted by it and stuff. And I definitely did.
It's,
Um,
it's
I don't know what I'm rambling about. It's, again, I'm not
well,
asking
I
questions,
no,
but
what's great is you start all the conversations around things I wouldn't think of. But yeah, okay, it is a spoiler. The happy ending I wanted was for at this moment in his character's life, she's picking herself, and that is the book. Actually, the real relationship the book's about is with herself, self-discovery, the coming of age. And again, that wasn't really something that I feel I was taught through, you know, all the environments of where I grew up, it felt like you find a partner, you keep a partner, you move in, you get married, you have children. Well, I just happen to be born in a certain way that I don't think those things excite me, but I do want to feel love, and I do want to feel part of a family and connection. But sometimes I feel like a bit of a weirdo or alien, and that it's like, no, you're not. It's just not enough people are necessarily have been having conversations about that.
I went to see Candice Bushell, you know, who wrote Sex and the City.
Yeah. Oh, she did a one-woman show, didn't she? I wanted to see it, but I was out of the country at the time. Was it amazing?
Yeah, it was so good. It just made me think about it made me like because I still find the idea of I'm single now, but I feel like I still have this idea that at some point I need to find someone and that kind of thing. And just watching her and talk about all her like her having divorces and all her friends having divorces, and it just she just made being old and being single sound so exciting, and I was like, it just made me excited for that.
Yeah, and not so scary. And, you know, I get scared about those things that I'm trying to not care about, because that's what, like, sort of societal conditioning does. But I don't know, I heard a story the other day, like a friend's mum whose like partner died when they're in their 50s. She's like just approaching 60s, and she's just met someone, and they are so into each other, sexually love it, like, and that I'm just like, we don't know at what age what age an incredible relationship will come, whether that's a romantic relationship or a platonic. And also in the Observer on Sunday, they do this thing called love, like a male's and a female's response to like a love thing. And this week it was so and so 79 and so and so's 80, and these guys were like meeting 4 times a week, having sex like 3 times every time they met. And I know that's more about the sex side, but I found that really like, wow, exciting.
Yeah, definitely. No, it's just deprogramming that idea that women have like an expiry date, isn't it?
Yeah.
I was also thinking recently, a friend of mine's just gone for a breakup, and you know, seemed like she was with someone she'd be with forever. And I just thought, oh, like maybe I'll meet someone in 2 years, but then we'll break up in 10, and then she'll have found someone in 5, and they'll be going, do you know what I mean? It's like, I think like we're going to be going through breakups our entire lives, but we'll still be there, and
we
that
all
will
live
be
so long
ongoing.
Yeah,
yeah.
I talked over you, sorry. But yeah, because we live so long. But also, this is probably quite not an easy thing to sort of say to everyone, but if you can focus on being self-sufficient, when you're self-sufficient, like whether that's, you know, just being able to eventually have, you know, have your, you know, just look after yourself, then the things that you want, you can probably get, but it might just look like it in a different way. I feel like I'm being really vague, but like if I wasn't in a relationship and if I wanted to have children and if I was self-sufficient, I could look at becoming a mum on my own. You know, like things like that. And just be taking some sort of well, because we are women, and I hate all this conversation about a biological clock, but essentially there is something that happens with aged women that men don't have to deal with, and that makes you feel a stress, even if you're someone who's like, I don't care about these things. So maybe trying to take the calm from like, whatever happens, I can maybe find a way around it or something.
Yeah.
It can be aging, but yeah.
Is there, you know, because in the book she's in her 30s, and like I've heard that in your 30s you have everything starts to be sorted out, and your 20s are like stressful. Like, is there anything you really noticed when you were in your 30s that you started to figure out with like love and relationships with yourself? And
I think because I'd always had like a job, and then with that job I became senior. So with seniority came a bit more money. The things I didn't know how to work out, I was able to have like professional conversations with people to be like, what does it mean that my mum left when I was 12? And so that's quite a privileged position to be in, isn't it? Like, therapy is expensive, but for me that was tied into age, wanting to A, answer the question, and B, being in a position where I, instead of like spending loads of money on drugs and booze, I could put that money to therapy, not like whack loads of bills on ASOS. You know what, maybe that. So for me, but obviously I've come with a certain set of situations where in my 20s I used to think it was really cool and badass that like, oh, my mum joined a cult, and then at some point when that stopped becoming a bit of a, it accidentally became like a bit of a party trick or something. Or I definitely deal with sad things through humor, not in a way that I'm trying to avoid them. And then I think I just thought, oh, maybe you should actually investigate that properly, because I think 12-year-old you might not be cool with it. And that was tied into after writing the play and going through the rehearsal process and having all these humans talk about something that was actually real, and me being like, oh, like that was the first time I'd heard the word abandonment and like abandonment issues. And I was in my early 30s and was like, well, that's not a word I associate with. And then obviously then did loads of research and was like, oh, I thought I was just really hard and a bit gangster. It turns out I've got abandonment issues.
Nice. I've had such a good time. I feel all inspired to write, and I love the book so much. It was amazing. Thank you for watching this Fane online event.